Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Healthier Michigan Table Talks. My name is Audrey Harvey. I am the CEO of the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan Foundation. Today we'll be discussing mental health, the many forms it takes, and some of our own experiences and ways to manage and maintain our mental health. I'm joined by a few guests, and can you each take a moment to introduce yourselves? Angela?
Hi, I'm Angela Moore. I am a licensed counselor as well as an NASM master trainer and radio host. I like to empower people through healthy thinking, healthy living, and exercise.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Gottlieb. I'm a forensic psychiatrist with a clinical appointment at the University of Michigan. I also serve as an associate medical director for Blue Care Network of Michigan.
Hi, I'm Jim Foster. I'm a director at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. I have a passion for mental health. It's something that I personally struggle with, and I like to share my experiences and hope that it might help others.
Well, let me read for us the first question that we'll answer today. Many people are afflicted by the shortage of mental health providers. What resources have you used or seen others use to find help? Would you like to start with that one, Dorothy?
So I think the first point that I would want to make in this, as I respond to this question, is that the shortage of mental health providers affects different people differently depending on the type of pathology that they have. So for someone who has, let's say, an anxiety or depression and is seeing their primary care doctor and maybe they're reluctant to see a therapist, they may benefit from some embedded case manager or social worker in their clinic. Perhaps their primary care doctor may benefit from some additional resources that they can use to help someone in that setting. Otherwise, I've seen creative models such as one that we use at Blue Care Network, where we have some more intensive case management available to people with more severe, persistent mental health concerns. So my main point is that we really have to take a look at the individual and tailor whatever their access problem is to whatever their specific struggles are.
That's helpful. I will tell you, my recommendation would be two things. The first thing is that the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan online visits is available, and it provides both psychiatry as well as therapy 24 hours a day that can be accessed through the app. And then secondly, every single one of Michigan's 83 counties has a county mental health agency. And that can be found by looking on the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and pulling up mental health services map and finding where the local site is in your area. Dorothy, would you like to pull our next question?
I'd be glad to, thanks. What are the treatment options for someone struggling with their mental health? So I suppose I will start by answering that the most important thing to consider is trying to determine what the issue is. And so once you have a licensed clinician or professional, take an individual, a client or a patient, and do a complete biological, psychological, and social analysis of what's going on. You can have some idea of what the diagnosis might be or diagnoses, if there are any, and then carefully consider what types of treatment options one might consider. Not just about medication, of which there are hundreds of options, but also psychotherapy, of which there are hundreds of modalities. Anything from lifestyle modifications, trying to critically assess to what extent food or sleep or exercise or other lifestyle, alcohol and drugs, other lifestyle modifications might affect someone's sense of well-being or overall mental health. And other treatment options. So treatment options could be making interventions in that realm, or perhaps if there's an unaddressed medical problem. I see people with sleep apnea or diabetes or heart disease or post-stroke. And any number of these types of conditions can also have profound effects on people's mood and anxiety. So we have to consider addressing those if you're going to treat the whole person and get their mental health in better shape.
Yeah, I like your answer, and given my background, I would say I'd start with my primary care doctor. And go in and talk to my primary care doctor and tell them what I'm experiencing and get some recommendations from them on where I would go. One of the things that I've learned in some of the work we've done at the foundation is that there are so many other things that contribute to what's going on mentally, as you mentioned, exercise, food choices, that I would start with my primary care doctor.
That really resonates with me because when, in my own personal experience, when I didn't know what was going on with me, I just had a conversation with my doctor, and he helped direct me to the care that I needed. So it was, you don't have to necessarily come up with all the answers yourself.
Yeah, it's important.
It's, but to have that conversation, have that dialogue with your doctor, and they can help you find what you need.
One of the things that I would like to add to as well is there are, of course, various approaches. You can do psychotherapy, medication, sometimes a combination of psychotherapy and medication. Also, alternative therapeutic treatments. In terms of psychotherapy, there's cognitive behavioral therapy, REBT, as well as person-centered therapeutic approaches. As a counselor, you really determine what type of therapeutic treatment you're going to use once you meet with the client and diagnose and then come up with a treatment plan.
Everyone has their own individual, unique makeup, and that needs to be, and anything you're going to do to try and address what's going on has to take all of that into consideration.
When I was in therapy, my therapist suggested a support group, and it took me a little while to decide that was okay. That not only was I managing my own struggles personally, but then to decide that I wanted to do this as a group with other people. And it took me a while to see that would be beneficial. Eventually, I did join the group, and I did find it helpful to have other people and to have other opinions. And actually, we gave each other feedback. And it was like having another sounding board and having another way to do a self-check. So eventually it worked out. But I will admit, I was very hesitant in the beginning to be part of a group.
I did group therapy as well, and I found it fantastic. Because for me, it was, it made me feel like I wasn't alone. And I listened to all the scenarios that everyone else was living with. And it just gave me a sense of, oh, it's just not me. There's other people out there, and that was really the genesis for me of realizing that the value of just talking about it, and that's something we never did in my family.
Yeah, we all know what happens when there's major forces, important life changes happening at play, and they're shushed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, boils over if you don't address it.
Do you want to pull our next
Yes,
question?
I will. What are some of the biggest challenges that Michigan is facing in terms of mental health? There's definitely an increase in adolescent depression, anxiety, as well as diagnosis of ADHD. I'm also seeing an increase but also a greater awareness about the comorbidity of the substance abuse with mental health. I also see unfortunately, a decline in access to professionals that can actually address those issues.
Something that I see as being the challenges that Michigan faces are shared in the broader community, and one of those is an inadequate investment in the youngest, most vulnerable people in our population. Inadequate resources to help young children when they're first exposed to trauma, or make sure that there are adequate resources for vulnerable individuals, especially those who are minors or very young children.
Yeah, I will tell you, last year alone, we did 5 grants that were all focused around children and behavioral health.
Amazing.
And so it's spread throughout the state in spots, but it's sort of reminding me of kind of like a groundswell that's building, that's saying that we have to do a better job of addressing the mental health of both young children, teenagers, and even those in college.
Yeah, there's a bottomless need. I mean, it's unfortunate, but there is.
Jim, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. How can we challenge the stigma around mental illness? Well, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Mental illness has always been a hard thing, as I mentioned before, a very difficult thing to talk about, even within families. And that's why I'm so open about my situation, because I feel like it's important to just get it out there, and it's healthy to get it out there. And my belief is that through continuing dialogue like this within families, within schools, and within and employers, just making this type of dialogue possible helps everybody realize that it's probably more prevalent than you think.
I would agree with you and would say, for me personally, it has been about letting people know it's okay to open up. And it's okay to, as a leader in an organization, to have someone tell me, I have to leave for therapy today. The same way, and so for me, I say I treat it like it's a broken arm. If you had a broken arm and you had to go to therapy for your broken arm, I wouldn't say, no, you got to stay at work, or, oh my God, that's a shame, there's something wrong with you. And so letting people know it's okay to open up and it's okay to share, and being supportive with mental health, to me, makes them feel better about it. And it's because I'm not putting shame on them. And I'm understanding that it's a part of you, just like any other part of your body, that needs to be treated. And that it's nothing for you to be embarrassed about or feel less than because of. But being supportive like that it's something that's taken a while. That is the same way Jim says we didn't talk about mental health. It wasn't always the same way. It was sort of passed down, if you will, somehow in our culture, that if there's something wrong with you mentally, that it was a weakness. That it was a personal weakness or flaw on your part. And it's been through time and education and training and reading that I have decided that's just, and then part of what we do here in my job has really taught me that that's not the right way to think about it.
I would agree completely. I think the notion that people with mental illness are weak is a fallacy. I actually think of it the opposite way. Try walking around in life, pushing a boulder up a hill, all day long. I think we're actually, stronger for it. And it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy road to hoe, so to speak. So yeah, absolutely. I don't see it as a weakness. I think there's also, with everything, there's two sides of the coin. My perspective is that people who suffer from depression and anxiety are also very empathetic people, because they can see, I feel like they see this in other people, and they understand pain, and they can relate.
Yeah, I think bottom line, if we're going to address stigma, we have to talk about it. We have to open the dialogue. And I love the analogy, Audrey, about the broken arm. I talk every day until I'm blue in the face about this to patients. If you had pneumonia and your treatment was to take your antibiotics and get in bed and rest, you wouldn't bat an eye, right? Or if you had a broken arm and you got to get enough calcium and vitamin D and wear this brace and go to physical therapy, it's what you got to do. However, if it's depression, anxiety, and it's psychotherapy, and it's sleep, and it's not drinking alcohol or taking a medication, it's really viewed. It can be viewed differently in our society. We've made progress, but we've fallen short.
You would never feel ashamed about going to your doctor or your dentist. And it's funny because we don't say I went to therapy. That's something that we typically hide from even our closest friends. We don't share that. And something else that I think is really important to mention is that it's okay to not be okay. Quite often, something that I recommend to parents that I counsel when I'm trying to help them, kind of bridge that gap with their kids, as I say, share with your kids when you're not doing okay. If you're having a day where you're sad, explain why you're sad. Explain why you're a little irritable, a little snappy. Explain to your child when you come home from work and you've had a very difficult day, the need to maybe go and take a few minutes to gather yourself before you start conversation. That teaches kids how they can deal with stress.
I would also say that's the same for work. In work can be a very competitive and stressful environment. And when you come into work and you're not okay, and you don't have a way to communicate to your coworkers or to your leader that you're not okay and why, it can set up a series of events that eventually can become more stressful because people don't understand why your mood's changing. They don't understand why you're a little distracted. They don't understand why you're distant. And so for me, a huge part of eliminating shame is about feeling free to share what's going on in your life with those who are impacted by it. So if your boss and your coworkers are impacted, you have to be able to share with them something that allows them to be able to accept you. Are we back to me?
Yes.
I think so.
Let's see. No, this is a good one. What are some everyday tactics you would recommend for someone who is struggling with their mental health? And I'll start. And there's a couple things that I do. The first thing I do is I don't pick on myself. It's a rule I made a while ago, and when I hear the self-talk starting, I have a little phrase I say, and the phrase is, "Today is not the day to pick on Audrey. We'll do it tomorrow." But we won't pick on Audrey today. And so it's a self-talk that allows me to stop the negative talk that sometimes we all fall into. The other thing I do is I try to exercise at least twice a week, 2 good sessions twice a week. I try to make sure that I eat a balanced diet most days. Not every day, but most days. I actually also do acupuncture twice a month. So I'll go to acupuncture, and it helps me with a number of different ailments that I suffer, but I have been surprised at how much it helps me clear and maintain a clear head. I did it for about 6 months, and then my husband decided that it looked like whatever it was, I was just having way too much fun. And now my husband also goes twice a month to acupuncture. And then yoga is the other thing that I started that also seems to bring me a lot of peace. Even if it's just once a week, it brings me a lot of peace that allows me to have the resiliency that I need sometimes when faced with challenges.
One of the things that I do when, and it depends whether it's an anxiety episode or a depression episode, because the two don't always necessarily meet, and so I maybe have those things at different times. And this is actually something my wife came up with to help me, because I think one of the very important things is to kind of own your situation. Okay. Someone else can't just come and fix you without you participating or being or owning it or having accountability to yourself. And this is something that I do, is that I ask myself the question: what's the one thing I'm going to do today to help myself? And it could be anywhere. I'm going to make an appointment with my therapist. I'm going to call my doctor. I'm going to exercise. Do something. And because the heart, especially when it comes to depression, it's the hardest thing to do is to do anything. So just take that one little step. And so that's a trick that I use.
So that one thing that's going to put you on a path towards good mental health. What's the thing I can do for myself?
Exactly.
Well, I like that.
And so the 3 most important things that I always, it tends to be the low-hanging fruit. I think people often overlook 3 other critical things that I am always talking about with my patients, and that is sleep, diet, and exercise. So people oftentimes underestimate what their bodies need as far as adequate sleep. They'll say, what's going on? I'm an anxious mess. I'm depressed. I have no energy. Oh, by the way, I'm sleeping 5 hours a night, And so people oftentimes expect or same with food, that people are not, oftentimes not eating regular balanced meals and then lacking energy, or having, if you have any predisposition to depression and you're not sleeping or not eating properly or not, exercising the body, forget about it. It's not going to come together. So this is, these are, top things, that I always make sure to talk to people about as well.
I'm going to pull our last question for today. How do you set boundaries for supporting someone with mental health issues while not compromising your own? I will start to answer this one by saying, again, I try to consider mental health issues like a physical health issue. And I know if you have a broken arm, I can help you by getting you back and forth to the doctor, maybe giving you a meal, maybe being empathetic when you're in some pain. But I would never try to reset your arm because I'm not a doctor. And the same way, if you're having medical issues, I can be empathetic and I can listen, but I can also consider and request that you seek someone who's a professional, because I cannot help manage your mental health issues because I'm not trained. So I sort of draw the line and say, I can support you by being empathetic and listening and supportive, but I can't treat you. And so that's where I have to make suggestions about where can you go, where can you get help. When I needed help and it was an emergency, I went to the Blue Cross online visits, and I saw a medical professional when I was sick. When I was on the app, I noticed they also had 24-hour therapy as well as psychiatry, and I could recommend that to someone who was feeling that they were in a crisis. But I can't try to fix you because, I'm not trained, and that's how I kind of draw the boundary.
When I'm talking to people who are experiencing some form of anxiety or depression, I make sure they understand that the accountability is with them on getting help. As I mentioned earlier, it's the what have I done for myself today? And so I try to put that back on them and make them understand the accountability is with them. There's nothing, like you say, you can't set the arm for them. I can't do that. And so that's one way in which I kind of draw that boundary.
There's a horrible myth and misconception that the goal of a therapist is to give the clients advice. And that is not the goal of a therapist. You are simply there to identify an illness, make a diagnosis, and come up with an appropriate treatment plan and a therapeutic intervention. But your goal is not to advise the client as much as to help them identify the internal and external resources that they have available to solve their issues issues and problems. If I was to give a client advice, I would be basing that advice on my values, my morals, my experiences, not that of the client. So it's really important to maintain the relationship, the professional relationship, but also understanding with the client that it is the client's personal responsibility to be the change that they need in their lives.
Yeah, this topic is near and dear to me, both personally and professionally. I would say, when people, the caregiver burnout is a real thing. So if your safety or another person's safety is coming into question, seeking professional help, emergency mental health help is critical. If depending on what type of diagnosis someone is struggling with, whether it's depression and it's bringing you down, you have to find a way to take care of yourself and help someone find a professional to take care of that themselves. That's one issue. If it's dealing with safety concerns and psychosis, getting someone involved urgently is critical, or suicidal thinking or behavior is critical. If there's someone that you encounter who has a personality disorder pathology, setting up clear boundaries, or finding support groups when there's substance use involved. So I think it's really neat to, again, I hate to sound like a broken record on this, but tailoring it to the pathology and to the dyad of friends or partners or siblings or whoever's involved, or a caregiver, patient, doctor, clinician relationship.
Well, it can be difficult sometimes because you don't want to be uncaring.
Right.
You don't want to seem like you don't care, but you also, as you said, you have to take care of the caregiver has to take care of themselves also.
Right, and safety first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you to our guests for taking time to share your personal experiences and your insights into mental health. And I thank you to our audience for joining us for another episode of A Healthier Michigan Table Talks. For more information and resources on mental health, or to see more information on this table talk, please check Blue Cross Blue Shield Health and Wellness blog, ahealthiermichigan.org. Thank you.